Here it is, an original Atari 2600, released in October of 1977. This system right here defines the word classic. And so, let's take a real quick look at it. Here we can see that there is a power switch to turn the system on and off. Here's a TV type switch for a color and black and white TV. Right here, we have the left difficulty switch for the first player, which has A and B. Here we can see that it has a cartridge port for the games. And originally, the Atari 2600 was originally known as the Video Computer System, or VCS. But after the release of the 5200, it was renamed to the 2600 based on its part name, CX2600. And then right over here we have a difficulty switch for the second player also. And then we have a game select switch and a game reset switch. So let's just turn around the system here. Here we go. And right here we can see that there is a second player controller port, or right controller port, the power adapter port, where you plug in the power adapter. And then right over here we have the first player, or left controller port. And coming off the back of the system here, you plug this cable into your TV, and that's the output for the system. Okay. Well, that's about all to look at the system. Now, the Atari 2600 had a bunch of different controllers that you could use. It had a keyboard, a keypad, it had a joystick, a flight simulating stick, it had paddle controllers, and even a driving wheel, which was similar to the paddle controllers, except for it could spin forever instead of stopping at certain points. So here, let's take a look at one of the original joystick controllers. So here we can see it's just a joystick, not very much contour or form fitting. It's just a big box with a joystick on the top, and it's got a big action button. Usually it's the fire button in games where you have a gun or a tank or a spaceship or something, and you move around with these or whatever. And here, let's take a look at something else. Okay, here is something that would come with the system often, along with Okay, now we can take a look at some of the cartridges. Now there's a couple different types of it. There's the iMagic and Mattel ones. So I'm going to show you a little preview of some of them. Here is a typical Atari 2600 cartridge. This one is made by Atari. This is Moon Patrol, a very good port of the arcade on the Now here we can see the typical bundle of the Atari 2600. Now with this would all be $199 in 19, let's say 80. You would get two joystick controllers. You would get the system itself. You would get a game, which was originally Combat, but later they changed it. They changed the Pac-In game to Pac-Man, a horrible port of the game. But they did this to sell more units for the Atari 2600 because they believed that most people wanted to play Pac-Man at home. And then you would get a pair of those conjoined paddle controllers. And then you would get the AC adapter. Here we can see it. You would also get the input box right here. Ooh, about the camera. And here we get the input box. All of that for $199 back in 1980. Okay, TV's on, so let's start up a quick game of Combat so I can show you what Atari 2600 games usually look like. Okay. Here's the startup screen that you would see on Combat. You just start the game up by pressing the reset switch, and it's very simple to control. You push it up to move forward, and left and right to move left and right. Back is to back up, and pushing the big red action button on the controller fires. It's a pretty simple game most of the time. It's 2 players, and you're going around shooting each other in tanks, but there's also other versions where you are in the sky, and I'm pretty sure there's one with a submarine in it too. One, you can see that if you press the game select switch, it'll change the layout of the fields, and so it makes it harder for the bullets to get through, and you have to maneuver around with your guys' tanks. As you can see, there's not much to see in the way of color and sound. It's very basic. There's about 4 colors on the screen. Let's see, red, yellow, green, and blue. Yes, there's 4 colors, and there's a constant sound when you move forward. So it's not a very impressive game to look at. Here we can see Galaxian on the Atari 2600. It's very similar to the arcade version, and up at the top you can see it has a copyright date of 1983 for Atari, and this falls into a very common category of Atari 2600 games, where they took an arcade game and ported it over to the system to make money. If you take a look at the top 10 games of the Atari 2600, up at the top is the horrible port of Pac-Man. Number 3 is Missile Command. Even down below that, there's number 8, which is River Raid. Number 10, which is Space Invaders. All of those were arcade games. And so it wasn't very uncommon to have ports. There's also Moon Patrol, Asteroids, Pong, Mario Bros, Donkey Kong, Zaxxon, and I can't even remember anymore. So there's a lot of arcade ports on the system. Overall, the Atari 2600 was a very successful console. So successful that, in fact, that it was responsible for over 50% of Atari's income. It's a very simple system to collect for, although they aren't very common around where I live. But it's definitely a fun game it's a fun gaming console if you want to collect a lot of older arcade games. Like I said before, they like to port them over. And so it's a system I would recommend for beginning collectors. Okay, for my conclusion, I think I'll give it a rating. Let's see. I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10, but only because it had that nice wood finish. Without that wood finish, it would not be a 9 out of 10.
No, I'm just kidding. It's a good gaming console.